where you're at. And I'm like,
So I'm going to record this one. So if anyone that can't make it can still get the information.
We need a
Hi,
pad.
Mark. How you doing?
Run a pad if I need it.
he's muted.
I see your mouth moving, so I'm assuming you're great.
Yeah, been fighting the cold cough thing for the last few days, so figured better to stay home.
Oh, we appreciate that.
So 46 below in Healy,
Is it really?
is that right?
19.
19 in here?
That's what.
No,
three-
19 right now.
Oh, okay, good.
I just drove home to drop Lily off and I was at 46.
I heard 46 below earlier, so I was
Oh, out at
curious
your
Three
house.
Bears
that
said
might have been.
19.
That's up the hill. Tenches are -36.
36. Wow.
Trust their temperature movement.
We need instrument.
My house is always warmer. But honestly, 20 below or 40 below, I just
Yeah.
don't like any of it.
It's just
I
cold.
got used to 20 below though. I did.
We liked it at that.
Yeah. I get excited when it gets above that.
The 40 and 50 below, I'm like, oh my gosh.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. We actually ran out of time on Saturday, so don't want to start too late. And so this is a different group. So let's just introduce ourselves and say where we're from. Does that work? How about Margaret and Quincy? Want to start?
I don't think we have any volume.
She doesn't know how to unmute.
That's okay. We'll have Chantal introduce you.
Okay, so I've got Margaret and Quentin. They are our Anderson Council members. They're brand new.
That's Quentin.
Quentin, yes.
Okay.
Margaret, the unmute button is on the lower left side by the start video. It's all good.
All right, and then who?
And I'm Chantel. I'm with the city of Anderson as well.
And I'm Debbie Terwilliger. I'm the new clerk down there.
Excellent. And then Dan.
Dan Fulton, the superintendent of the local school district.
Selena.
I'm Selena. I work here at Denali Borough.
Mark.
Mark Mickey, I live in Healy, and I'm a member of the Planning Commission.
All right, Dominic.
Yep, I live, my name's Dominic. I live in Cantwell, Assembly, C-Day.
Excellent. Okay, so we've got most of the boards represented here. Don't have a direct school board member, but we have Superintendent Fulta. And we did have school board members, maybe two, on Saturday. All right, so we're gonna start off with roles and responsibilities of a public official. And I've got a PowerPoint, so I'm gonna share that right now. Hopefully.
The alert that
Share the
popped up.
alert. Okay, let me stop sharing and see what that is about. Not even sure how to get to that security alert.
That's really
Does it let you check the box where it says enable external content for this session?
She's having a hard time navigating
Oh.
through this screen. Sharing videos outside of a PowerPoint has proven a little bit tricky on Zoom.
Okay.
Oh,
okay.
you got
Girl.
it. Yay.
All right. I didn't even realize that my cursor went onto the TV screen. So that was
Okay.
interesting. All right. So All right, Dominic, can you see the screen? Does it say public officials training?
No, I can't actually.
No,
Oh, okay. Let me try to share again.
Now I see it. What is it? Up in
Mhm.
front of it?
On the-
Yeah, I can see it.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. All right. I'm going to duplicate my screen here so I can see what you're seeing, hopefully. There we go. Okay. All right, let's start off with the Denali Borough and who we are. We are a home rule borough, which means that when we incorporated as a borough, we adopted a charter that was approved by the voters before we even became a borough. The charter defines the governing structure, functions, and services provided for the borough. So it was established before we were even established as a borough. The charter was voted on by the people that lived in this area. And that is how we got started. And our charter says that the governing body of the Denali Borough will be the assembly, and the executive power for the Denali Borough will be in the mayor. So there's duties that the mayor does, and there's duties that the assembly does. The mayor does have veto power. And then, of course, that veto can be overruled by a 2/3 majority vote. So more than a simple majority. All right, are you guys able to follow along, Dominic? Are you on the like structure chart? Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right, so this is how the borough is organized. It's a little bit small, but basically the public elects the assembly and the mayor. And then committees, including the planning commission, are formed from the assembly. The borough clerk and borough treasurer work for both the assembly and the mayor. And then the mayor hires, fires, supervises everybody else. And it's just slightly different with the school board. So the Board of Education, the school board members are elected by the people of the borough. And then the board hires the superintendent. It's not an elected position. So it's just a little bit of a different structure there. And then the superintendent is in charge of personnel in the school district. All right, roles and responsibilities of public officials. So who's a public official? The mayor, including the one at City of Anderson, assembly members, planning commissioners, school board members, municipal clerk, municipal treasurer, and council members. The superintendent would be considered a public official, even though he is not elected by the people, he still holds that public face. The main thing is like the assembly cannot fire the mayor, and Dan doesn't hold that same security, I would say. Sorry.
Known it from before I took the job.
Yeah, it was spelled out before. Yeah, he had a very public interview process, even though it was technically the school board that hired him. All right, so we're going to watch a video, but there's a few corrections I want to note before, and then we'll note them again after the video. This video comes out of Canada, and I thought it had a lot of good information, but the structure is just a little bit different. So in our structure, the assembly and school board established the committees, not the mayor or the superintendent. The mayor or superintendent can recommend that one be formed, but those are formed through the elected bodies. Presiding officer facilitates the meetings, not the mayor or superintendent. I do believe that the superintendent helps facilitate a lot of meetings. True? Okay. And then the mayor and the superintendent are the chief administrative officer or CAO. They reference the CAO in this upcoming video, and that's who, in our structure, that's who they're referencing. Hoping the video loads soon. Waiting for a red button to, to pop up. Sorry. Yeah.
Same training.
All right, now I have no idea.
Going to the tiny bit.
There's a red button on this screen down in that green part.
But it says
That's
stop
the
share.
share.
Oh, that's the
She
stuff.
doesn't want to do that.
Okay, let me try one more time to load that.
I mean, no matter how many times we test things, there's always
Oh,
challenges.
definitely.
You two could just act it out.
We could. We probably watched it
Maybe we
enough
could have
times.
watched it a little bit sooner. Huh, I'm not sure why that's not loading. Okay, I'm gonna stop share and we're gonna try it again. And then if it doesn't work, we'll just move on and not get hung up.
I'm not even giving you a place to play it.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's just like not loading. All right, well, we'll move on and hopefully capture the information anyways. So, oh, I've got another video. Let's hope this one loads. Okay.
A lot of navigating in and out. Videos are a hard thing to stream.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I saw that.
Okay, the video thumbnail, what did that say, is minimized somewhere? Believe it or not, she had a staff member stay home this morning so that we could stream this to make sure everything worked fine, and it was perfect.
Yep. Okay, so we're just gonna move right on. All right, so here's some tips to be an effective public official. So participate in all issues. Focus on policy, not the politics. Discuss, debate, disagree without fighting. Discuss relevant issues. If the assembly or board has no control over an issue, then try not to spend time, assembly and board time, on that issue. Try to stay focused. Find your lane. If it's not your lane, then step off. Read your packet before the meeting, not during the meeting or after. Be familiar with your code and policy. Ask questions. That probably should have been number one. Ask questions. So if you're serving on a board, you're expected to ask questions. You're the only one that can ask those questions during the meeting. And so if it comes to your mind, ask it. And get to know your staff. They're there to help you. Okay, here's some how do I's. So how do I add an item to the agenda? So the clerk or secretary creates a draft agenda, and then the presiding officer approves that draft agenda for public notice. Here at the borough office, the mayor actually helps draft it. We do it together, and I'm assuming that the superintendent has an awful big role in that as well. The assembly or school board approves the agenda at the beginning of the meeting, changing it from a draft to a final. So it remains a draft agenda up until the body takes action to make it a final or approved agenda. Okay, so how do you add an item to the agenda? You contact the clerk or secretary, or the mayor or the superintendent or the presiding officer of any of those bodies. There's numerous ways to ask for something to be included on the agenda. Can I add an item by amending the agenda during the meeting? And the technical answer is yes, you can make that motion to amend the agenda at that time. In reality, you should not. You should avoid amending the agenda at the beginning of the meeting, because most agenda items are going to require public notice before you can discuss them or take action on them. So what you would, if you chose to add something to the agenda, you could not take action on it until it received the adequate public notice.
So
So you
Amber,
could talk about it, but you couldn't take action, and you'd need to postpone it to a meeting to where it then could be noticed.
what would the time frame look like if you wanted to add something to say the upcoming meeting? Like how long ahead of time should you contact someone?
Well, I guess for this, I can speak specifically for the assembly. And we have a 10-day notice requirement. And but in our code, the 10 days is just the date, time, and location of that meeting. So it doesn't necessarily need to be the agenda, just the date, time, and location of the upcoming meeting. And that's 10 days. I published the agenda approximately 6 days before the meeting. And the reason I do that is inevitably, if I post, let's say the Wednesday before an upcoming meeting, the following Wednesday, somebody that receives that is going to panic thinking that they have a meeting that day, that Wednesday. It happens every time I post a week or more ahead of time. People assume that it's this Wednesday, the most recent Wednesday coming up. And so I post on Thursday for the next Wednesday's meeting, just so there's no confusion and it's clear that they have the weekend to read through their packet. I'm not sure how the school board.
We try to post on the Friday.
And you have Thursday.
And we have Thursday meetings.
Yeah.
If we honestly just like administratively forgot an item, we might amend something that we take action on if we look at it as a very low level and we kind of know like we should not do that. So we really try not to. We try to make sure if we do that, it's a very standard type of approval. It's not like you wouldn't say like, oh, we're gonna close schools. We forgot to add that. Like you would never do like a significant decision. When it's just like a real, just matter of fact type thing, we will go ahead and do that. Also for like adding an agenda item, one of our policies says, like if you reach out individually and ask like we say, contact the president, and the president would consider putting it on the agenda. But if two people ask for the same item, then it goes on the agenda. That's kind of like just saying you've got your motion in second before the meeting ever happened. That way it's just like really affirms to the president, two people want to talk about this. That is a legitimate item, provided it's within the preview of the board or the assembly.
Okay. Yeah, good. Good, thanks. All right, how do I write a resolution or ordinance? So if you would like a resolution or ordinance presented to the Assembly, Commission, or Board, you're going to work with the clerk or secretary or the mayor and superintendent, usually the clerk or secretary, to draft that document and to get it added to the agenda. With the assembly, our ordinances always state who sponsored that. Often, more times than not, it's the mayor that sponsors that ordinance. But if somebody has an idea that they want brought to the assembly, we will add somebody's name to that, just so it's clear who brought that forward. And then resolutions, we do that when there is someone other than the mayor or administrative staff bringing forward something for a resolution. But more times than not, it's not specified, and that usually is just because it came from the administration. So that's how we do it. That doesn't necessarily mean that's how it has to be done. And then, of course, the school district does not work in resolution. Well, you guys have resolutions,
Not as much.
not as much.
We don't do as much.
There's
and-
just more motions and policy.
Yeah, and so we'll draft kind of recommended language for motions, policies go through policy committee. And usually superintendent's doing like the technical drafting based on the input from the board members.
All right, how do I talk to other members of the body? So the best practice is try to avoid deliberation of items coming before the body with other members as best you can. So if you can avoid that one-on-one conversation, that's best. That's not reality that we live in. It doesn't happen. So the bottom line is, and we'll get into some of this deeper in just a minute, but the bottom line is if you've talked with someone, if you've shared information, just be sure to share that same information with the body as a whole later. So it's called ex parte communication. We'll get into it a little bit more in a minute, but the bottom line is if you've talked to someone, you've gained a little bit of knowledge, just make sure that the whole body has the same knowledge base, the same information that you now hold. Member to member deliberation can be seen as both ex parte communication, and it could be a possible violation of the Open Meetings Act. So the Open Meetings Act means that you can't, a quorum cannot be together talking about things outside of a public notification and a public meeting. So if there was, let's say, 4 planning commissioners all at a high school basketball game, if they got together at halftime and started talking about an upcoming subdivision, that would be a violation of the Open Meetings Act. They should avoid that and just talk about basketball if that's.
Okay, but the 4 can be together, talking about basketball.
Oh, it's
or
going to
whatever.
happen. 4 are going to be together.
Yes.
I mean, look at
Okay.
graduation.
Yes.
You know, everybody's in violation, right?
Okay.
So just you just can't talk
About business.
business.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
And I think with the smaller planning commission and smaller assembly, that plays a bigger role because a smaller group of people represents a quorum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so our bodies just went from 9 to 7. And so all of those benchmarks that we've remembered or tried to remember have now changed. And so now a majority for the Assembly and School Board is now 4 instead of 5. And what would be considered a supermajority or 2/3 or more than a majority, however it's worded, would be 5. So there's some things that need that higher level of approval. So when does a business item belong to the body? So once something's been placed on the business table for the body to deliberate, in most cases, it'll be either opened for discussion or the assembly formally introduces things. Once it's on the table as a business item, it now belongs to the body, not the person. So let's say an assembly member wanted to talk about something for the preschool. And so they wrote up an ordinance and they wanted this to happen on behalf of the preschool, and they brought it to the body and it has their name on it as a sponsor of that. Once it was introduced and seconded in the assembly meeting, that ordinance now belongs to the body, not to that individual. So they can't say, oh, never mind, I don't want to talk about it. That it's not theirs anymore to make that decision. It's the body's. All right, so like I was talking about, the assembly uses ordinances to establish, alter, or abolish departments, levy any new taxes. One qualifier on that one is with taxes, it would also take a vote of the people before it could be enacted. So there's certain things that have to go beyond the assembly even and be voted on by the people. Adopt the annual budget or make appropriations or transfers. That's by ordinance. Adopt or repeal, modify or repeal any of our plans that we have. change the rate of our utility. Our only utility is solid waste. The city of Anderson has sewer as a utility. So to change the rate for that utility has to be by ordinance. Fix the compensation of members for the assembly, boards, or commissions. Establish a formal procedure for borough land acquisition, disposal, and rights. Provide for a comprehensive personnel system. Here at the borough, we have a personnel policy that gets approved by the assembly if there's changes. Create or designate itself to be a board of review, adjustment, equalization, or canvassing board. All throughout our code, if the administration makes a decision, that a decision can be appealed to the assembly. They would be considered that review or appellate body. All right, the other thing the assembly uses is resolutions. And what happens by resolutions is they make formal statements. They can make declarations. They can formalize support for an idea or a project. And they can also formally direct the administration to do something. And that's through a resolution. So those are the main ways that the assembly takes action. The school board makes decisions to solicit public input on education needs and utilizes that information to make budget decisions. They approve and adopt the annual budget. They also approve budget transfers. They're accountable for all district funds. They adopt written policies governing the school district, including the purchase of supplies and equipment. They review the annual audit of district accounts and business procedures. They provide for, in cooperation with the borough, long-range plans to acquire, dispose of sites, and to add, maintain, and staff new facilities. Provides for long-range plans related to equipment, vehicles, and capital projects. And they advocate and secure community support for additional financing when necessary and when possible. Anything you want to add, Dan? I think I pulled that out of one of your policies.
Probably, I'd say evaluate and hire the superintendent.
Oh, that is a good one.
The
Yeah.
key, kind of
Luckily, we
key
haven't had to do
thing.
that recently.
But you do have to evaluate and provide that feedback.
Yeah.
Is a key role of the school.
Actually, they do an annual evaluation, correct?
Yes. And the advocates and secure community support is for funding, especially, you know, that advocacy work in Juneau.
Yes, right.
Critical these days. Appreciate your ongoing support, everybody.
Chantal, anything you want to add for City of Anderson?
That I can think of right now.
All right, let's review the Alaska Open Meetings Act. So the state of Alaska has an Open Meetings Act. Most states have their own version, but they all state pretty much the same thing. And that's requires that all meetings of public entity governing bodies be open to the public and the body provide reasonable notice of its meetings. And in our charter, it simply states that all meetings of the assembly shall be public and the public shall have a reasonable opportunity to be heard. So again, do community or social gatherings constitute a meeting? No, as long as you're not talking about business. And how about an email chain? Does that constitute a meeting? And the answer is yes. So for you to email all of the members information as an assembly member, council member, or planning commission or school board member, that should not be done. You should not email all of your council members, assembly members, board members. All right, so there's one caution with email also. Even though the borough and the school district, I'm not sure about the City of Anderson, provide email addresses for our public officials. Okay. If you choose to use your personal email for your public business, public entity business, there is a chance that that email could be subpoenaed as a record for public Freedom of Information Act. So that's just something to note. It's helpful if you're able to keep the two separate. there's safety in that. It's harder than you think, especially because until you're elected, you usually put out there your own personal email because you haven't been elected yet. So if you're just running for a seat, you often use a personal email and as a point of contact that you list on your declaration page. And so it's out there and people see that and have used it to email you questions and things. So it's really hard to keep them separated. If you can, good on you. You might save yourself some hassle in the future. And the thing that's really hard about that is I get things, especially from the school district for some reason, that comes to both my business and personal. And you have no control over people that reach out to you. And yet that still kind of breaks that barrier or that protection of trying to keep it separate. So like I said, if you can, good on you. It's really hard. And some of it you don't have any control over. All right, any questions on that?
Just a couple of things. First with the emails. And again, thinking kind of from more an administrative side where like we would send information out in a group to copy to all. And our recommendation to like our board members is don't reply all. That's because then we start into that group discussion. Or if one person forwards an email, you get an ongoing forwarded email. Maybe it's one-to-one between board members, but it continues and has all the ongoing discussions. That becomes kind of those risks of you're having more than two people talking. And I'm curious, like more like your interpretation of the one-to-one discussions, where earlier you're saying avoid those, where legal advice that we've had says, no, it's not a violation of the Open Meetings Act for two board members to talk about an issue. Like, and it's like, do that. Just don't do that in a group. Like your point of being elected on the board is to think deeply about these things. So think deeply about it, talk to other board members about it to understand deep thinking. Again, in public, get that deep thinking out on the table for everybody. But at no point do you go, okay, well, we're talking. Well, let's conference in Chantel. Let's conference in Debbie. And all of a sudden, you now have a meeting going on. Make sure if you're doing that, it's always only one-to-one. And always remember that part of that public discourse at a meeting is for you to have that opportunity of saying, well, these are my thoughts. And put that out there so that the other board members or assembly members can see that. And so the public sees where you're coming from.
Yeah, and I hear that. One thing, I guess one note of caution I would add is that I've seen it happen before where it becomes what is considered a serial communication. And so I go and I talk to Selena just one-on-one, but then I go and talk to Chantal one-on-one, and then I go talk to Debbie one-on-one. And pretty soon I've talked to my entire body just one-on-one. And that could be seen as a violation. And so if you have someone that you trust and you bounce ideas off each other really well, and you know that it's just going to be the two of you talking, then yeah, technically that's absolutely correct. And you can do that, and it can be helpful. Like it's helpful to get different perspectives and have that more casual conversation. Sometimes even more blunt conversation, something that you wouldn't necessarily say in public, but it's there and it's real. So I would just caution that one, make sure that you don't draw other people in. And also only do that with one or two. Don't create a serial communication situation. All right, anything from anyone? No? Okay, let's move on. Here, take a packet and hand them off. So I'm going to share my screen. I just handed out paper copies of this same thing, but I'm going to share my screen again and you'll see what we're looking at. All right, can you guys see that okay?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so let's go review what the different types of meetings are. So there's a regular meeting. And a regular meeting means that the body is meeting at a specific date or time. It's usually set out in your policy or code of what that day and time is going to be. It's your regularly scheduled meeting. For the assembly, we meet the second Wednesday of every month. I believe the school board meets the third Thursday of every month. How about City of Anderson? I think it's on a
Second Tuesday.
Second Tuesday. Okay. Yeah, so there's a regular meeting set at a regular time that people can expect there to be a meeting. All right, special meeting. So a special meeting is a meeting held for a special and limited purpose. So if there's an item that you need to talk about quickly, urgently, or is kind of a one-off, like this is a separate topic that just needs a little bit of a deep dive, that's when you'd have a special meeting. And that special meeting is going to be limited in purpose. It's not going to follow your regular agenda, and it can be whatever date or time that the body decides to have that special meeting. The public notification requirement is different for a special meeting. So where for the assembly, before it's a 10-day notification, it's 24 hours for a special meeting. More if you can, but 24 hours is the minimum. A work session. Work session is an opportunity for the board to learn and discuss issues in a less formal environment. However, no action can be taken at a work session. You don't need to have a quorum. You don't even need to have an agenda technically, but you need to know what you're meeting about. It does need to be public noticed, but no action can be taken, but it's less formal. You can sit, have a conversation, look at documents, whatever it is. It's more of a discussion than formal meeting. All right, and then public hearing. A public hearing is a formal proceeding held in order to receive testimony from interested parties or from the general public. So a public hearing is more time when it's for you to listen. You're not doing business, you're not taking action, you're listening to the public. So every ordinance that gets passed has to receive at least one public hearing. So it's a time set apart for people just to tell you what they think about that ordinance. It's very specific. Best practice is that the assembly or the body just listen. It's not time to debate, and it's not time for you to discuss as a body. It's just for the public. It's for you to hear the public. It's a public hearing. All right, and then there's executive session. Executive session has a lot of rules attached to it. It has to be public notice before you can go into executive session. Executive session happens within another meeting. So you have to call a meeting to order, and then the body moves to go into executive session. So you can't just open straight into an executive session. There has to be that calling to order, voting to go into executive session. And there's only certain reasons that you can go into executive session. And they are matters in which the immediate knowledge of such would clearly have an adverse effect upon the finances of the government unit. Subjects that tend to prejudice the reputation and character of any person, provided the person may request a public discussion. That's two topics right there. So if it could prejudice the character of a person, you should offer to go into executive session, plan to go into executive session. However, the person that's about can request that it be in public. So those are kind of two different issues there. And then the third one is matters which by law, municipal charter or ordinance are required to be confidential. So most of what we do here as a public body is public information. And people can come in and read just about everything. 90% of what is in this office is open to the public. There's only a few things that are designated as confidential. So if it's any of one of those things, then it should be an executive session. All right, any questions about types of meetings? All right, public meeting versus meeting open to the public. So the State of Alaska Open Meetings Act and the Denali Borough Code require that meetings be open to the public. This requirement can be misunderstood as a public meeting. The language is similar, but it is different. So a public meeting is more like that public hearing where it's time for the assembly to listen and hear from the public. But your regular meeting, your special meeting, your work session, executive session, those are all for the body to do business. It is your business meeting that's open to the public. The public can come, they can watch, they can listen. All of our agendas have an opportunity for the public to be heard. It's a requirement in our code, but it's not a debate with the public. It's not a deliberation with the public. It's for the assembly to do their business at their business meeting, and the public is invited to attend and invited to watch. There are certain points that they're invited to participate, but that's something to keep in mind. You're there to do some business, get it done. Clear? Got the differences there? Okay. Yeah. It gets muddy sometimes. All right. And charter versus code. This completely affects the assembly more than any of the other bodies. Actually, City of Anderson probably has a charter.
Seen it in our codes.
Maybe somewhere.
Yeah.
They probably have an initial charter. That's interesting. We should look into that. That would be interesting. So our Denali Borough Charter was adopted and approved by what was called the Rail Belt Borough Planning Committee. That happened on September 7th of 1989. And as part of our application to the state to incorporate as a borough, the charter had to be included. And so that charter was approved before we were even incorporated. And then once we were incorporated by the state, it was established as the charter of the Denali Borough. So that was our first rules and regulations that we had. And so the difference between charter and code basically boils down to anything written in code can be changed via ordinance. So the assembly, using 2 meetings, a minimum of 2 meetings, can change anything in code. If something is in charter, it has to be changed by a vote of the people. It cannot be changed simply by an assembly ordinance. So it has a higher level of public interaction and input. Any thoughts on charter versus a code? It's a pretty
pretty clear.
Pretty assembly specific item. I'm not sure that the school district has an equivalent to that. And if Anderson has a charter, it would be equivalent to that, but that would be something we could look at later.
We'll look for it.
Yeah.
No, I think it's different. The school district being, an entity created by the state, we're governed in a sense like the charter that established the borough. Like we have the state constitution, the state statutes that establishes the school district and actually sets a lot of the kind of core guidelines, and you've got to do certain things. Right. That's all in state code for us.
And so that is untouchable by your school board.
We have no say about that at all. Right. Nothing we can do.
Right.
Policy could be amended by the board.
Board policy can be changed by the board, generally 2 meetings, though they can take a vote and decide to change it in 1 meeting and then vote on it the same meeting, but it has to be a very kind of conscious action or else it's 2 meetings. So again, that's intended to kind of slow them down for policy changes.
Yeah, the assembly functions, it has the same 2 meeting requirement for ordinances, but not resolutions. Ordinances have to be introduced, then they have to be scheduled for that public hearing, which is why it takes 2 meetings, is they need that public hearing piece. And then after the public hearing, so generally in the regular meeting that follows a public hearing is when it can be approved for the first time. All right, and that leads us into ordinances versus resolutions, which is what I just spelled out.
Yep.
Resolutions can happen in one meeting. They are less formal and they hold less authority than an ordinance. So again, we already reviewed all the things that have to be done by ordinance. So those would have to receive those two meetings at least. If it's more impactful, the assembly often takes it to more than just those 2 meetings. There is one exception, and I would I'll go ahead and point that out now. There is the opportunity to have an emergency ordinance. We did use the emergency ordinance when COVID became a thing and the governor issued a state of emergency. At a meeting, we issued an emergency ordinance. It can be done in one meeting. There's certain things, levying taxes and creating departments. Those are 2 things that cannot be done with an emergency ordinance. The other thing about emergency ordinances, they're only good. They expire after 60 days. So you can pass that emergency ordinance, but you're going to have to take some real action to make it official within the next 60 days. And our emergency ordinance was to allow for virtual meetings.
Right.
All right, public official and staff relationship. So even though you're on the council, assembly, school board, the staff do not report to you. They have someone that they report to, and it's not you. So you might love them. So if
tell them what to do.
you can ask them very kindly if they could get you some information, if they could help you get something on the agenda, if they will help you write a resolution or ordinance or policy, you can ask them for your help, but you cannot go in and tell them that this is what you're going to do and I really need you to do it today. That's outside of your lane. So hop back in that lane and talk to, if you want that directive, you could go to the superintendent, you could go to the mayor, someone that does hold that supervisory role, but it's not you.
Not you.
All right, any questions on that? All right, meeting minutes. I have to apologize. You that are not here are not experiencing this, but we think that the plug to the sewer exhaust is capped over and I keep getting wafts of sewer gas. I don't know if you guys are smelling.
Oh my God.
It's been so bad.
It's been so bad and it gets really bad and then it dissipates and you're thinking it's okay and then I can smell it. It's not you, Dan. It's not.
Bummer.
Yeah, so I've got a couple air purifiers going, but anyways, I just got another whiff that just about made my eyes water. So I apologize.
Oh, that's good. Chantel doesn't smell it.
Good.
Hallelujah.
Well, and I
Thank
think
God for
this
COVID.
Right?
Yeah,
I think this vent over here might be a location that it seeps in.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so meeting minutes. There's 3 different styles of meeting minutes. There's action minutes, and that's where you just say motions made, second, and action taken, approved, not approved. So those are very concise. They're usually very short. There's very little additional information in there. Then there's discussion minutes, and that's where they're gonna record those action steps, but they're gonna give a little bit of a summary of the discussion that happened around those action items. And then there's verbatim minutes, which I don't know who in the right mind would do, but it's where you do a transcript of the meeting, word for word. Please don't do it.
No,
If you do, don't do that.
No.
Unless you're a court clerk.
Court clerks, I think, are required to.
Other than that.
Other than that, please don't do those.
yes.
So
Nor do we want.
I would say we do mostly action minutes here. I do
Yeah.
mostly action minutes here with some discussion, especially on the reports and other items. So if there's an other item other than the ordinance or resolution, I'll try to summarize what that conversation was. There's some risk and danger when you start summarizing what you think that you've heard, because you're going to inevitably understand it wrong and not have it correct. So I encourage people to put their public comments in writing if they can, because then I can't get them wrong.
Mhm.
If it's a public comment that is longer or more detailed, I will usually try to reach out to that person and have them read my summary to make sure that I haven't interpreted it wrong. It's easy to sincerely hear it wrong or hear something that they didn't intend to say.
Yeah.
So that's the caution of trying to do more action minutes where there's less risk of getting some information wrong.
Question.
Yeah.
So she said the sky is blue. It's gonna be sunny and pretty tomorrow. So I want to call her up and say, hey, what did you mean to say? Oh, I meant to say it was raining and cloudy and gray and yucky outside. But she didn't say that statement in a public forum. How would you interpret that?
I would probably be even more vague than that. I would just simply say that Selena Marisol offered some public comments
On the weather.
Yes, okay.
Okay. The sky.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
It makes me think about our passport training that we just finished, because there's so much unconscious bias that you infer into things as you're listening to them, that it's really easy to capture what someone said just through your own filters. And it may not really be what they said at all, or what they intended to say.
Mhm. Yes.
And I really caught myself one time. There was a public comment and the individual was kind of had like a more aggressive approach in their communication style. And it was really interesting because what I wrote down, what I thought I was hearing them say, and then when I went back and just listened to the words and not to the body language and the facial expression and any of all that, I actually had it wrong. The words were much more clear if I had just listened to the words. And so it's a real caution to me that, what I'm seeing, hearing, smelling, all of that can affect what is actually being said.
Their tone as well.
Tone, yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Anything else on minutes?
Less is more.
That's just
Thank goodness.
and more accurate. Although I do think that there's value in some of that summary discussion or summary of comments, just in that sometimes you want to see, well, why did they go that direction, or why did they make that? And you can often pick that up if there is just a few words of summary. Even you can kind of pick up that what that discussion held. Now that we broadcast our meetings and they're on YouTube, you can go back and listen to the whole thing if you want to, but there are times that a little bit of summary can help future readers of those minutes. All right, ex parte communication. Who's familiar? Who's aware? Mark Mankey should be very aware because we did an entire training with our attorney on ex parte communication years ago. All right, and basically means ex parte communication means communication that you've received that no one else on your body has received. They haven't received the same information. So you're talking to your neighbor and they're really excited about this one ordinance that you're proposing. You're going to build a new subdivision. You're looking at this new subdivision, and they're super excited that you're doing this. Good or bad, doesn't matter. They're super excited about this. And so they start sharing with you information that they have about some adjoining lots, right? Something else that's happening around this that, you know, could be impactful to that said subdivision. That's information that you've received outside of the body, and yet it's information that should be shared with the body. It's information that could affect a decision. And so your responsibility, it's not that you can't receive an ex parte communication, it's that when you realize you have, or when you think you may have, your responsibility is to share that information with the rest of the group. It's for the group, it's for this decision, and it's information that you might be the only one that holds. So I would say err on the side of sharing too much than not enough if you think that you've received, if you feel that you've received information that you felt was insightful, that you hadn't heard before, that was very relevant, any of that. The reality is you're going to receive ex parte communication. You're not going to even realize that you have or that should share it. Like, this is the hardest thing in the world to regulate yourself on, but the more you can be aware of it and the more you can consider it, the less often you'll receive information and not relay that to the whole body. So it's an awareness thing, and it's knowing that you're going to receive that.
Question. So someone comes and is talking to you as a member of the assembly or school board or something, and you realize that you're receiving ex parte communication. Would it be best for you to bring that up at the next appropriate time where the body is meeting, or to suggest that that person attends the meeting and shares that with everyone, so that they're actually their message, not what you interpreted?
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay. So if you in that moment realize that, oh gosh, this is good information, encourage that person to come share it to them. If they can't come, encourage them to send that comment in writing so that everybody can get it in their words. It's always best if they can get it more firsthand than relayed. So that's always best. And thanks for bringing that up, because that's would be best in every situation. And if it's not possible, then you share it to the best of your knowledge.
Do you disclose that person's name?
No, you don't need to.
Okay.
Yeah, you can just say, you know, I was visiting with people and I
Yes.
heard this information, and then I went and checked it out, and then it's real, and this is what I got, and here's the pamphlet. This is what I like. You can just be vague if you need to be, and if you feel like that's most appropriate.
Okay.
So a couple of the examples of when these can happen would be discussion with individuals that we talked about, site visits or inspections. This is one that the Planning Commission does fairly often. They'll go and visit a parcel of borough property. And so there's opportunity there that you're kind of outside of the regular meeting. And so anyone that shows up then is going to walk around with one or two individuals, planning commissioners, probably not all of the planning commission at once. And so that's just an opportunity that could create an ex parte communication situation. Another one that the planning commission had talked about doing, I don't know that they did, but when you're really trying to seek public input on a certain topic, some bodies will go to, say, a sporting event like a basketball game or basketball tournament and kind of set up a booth. Like, if you're wanting more information on this topic, you know, come and talk to me. That's kind of setting yourself up directly for ex parte communication. You're asking the public, come talk to me sitting here, and then I'll relay it back. So in a situation like that, I would use caution, and I would also just have some type of form where the people that come and talk to you could put something in writing right then and there that you could hand deliver to the commission or the board. I think that's it on that. Any questions? How's everybody doing?
Doing good.
Good.
Good. All right, so if you're excited, we'll jump into parliamentary procedure.
Yay.
Yeah.
Amber, I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
The PowerPoint presentations you're going through, will those be available?
Sure, yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, you want me to
No, it's great information.
put them on the website? Which do you think?
Email.
Both?
Yeah, both, if you can email
Yeah.
and post, but no, it'd be great reference material.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully then you could watch the videos.
Yeah, right.
You don't have to just listen to me. Other people can talk to you too. All right, so I have another PowerPoint. I'm going to try to share it. Hope the videos work. If not, we'll just keep moving on.
I hope they don't miss the parliamentary procedure lady, the Robert's rules.
Robert's rules made simple.
She's so enthusiastic.
All right, are you guys seeing that screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, let's jump into some basics of parliamentary procedure. And the most basic you get is motions and amendments. So I have a video and I hope it works. If not, we'll talk through it.
Looks kind of scary.
She
but
doesn't
doesn't-
Yeah, it does look
scary.
Hey,
Ooh,
there
yeah.
we go. That's what we're waiting for.
Hey,
Dominic,
Is that
let me
clear?
play the video, please.
Susan Leahy here from RobertsRulesMadeSimple.com. Now, whether you're a part of a homeowners association or a church group.
All right, Dominic and Mark, is it playing for you guys?
It's playing. It's a little stuttering, but it's playing.
Yeah, a little choppy, but yeah, it is playing.
All right.
Group or a student organization or even a city government, one of the things that I understand about all groups is that it's essential for people to understand the basics when it comes to Robert's Rules of Order. Too many of my clients struggle with really just kind of learning the basics. So instead of having productive meetings, what you end up is having meetings where people are just stumbling over what I consider to be the basic building blocks of this language. So while you already may know that in my DVD I go over what I call the 7 fundamental motions used during most meetings, this video is to talk to you about what I consider to be the 3 most important motions used during most meetings. Now, why are they the most important motions? Because they're the most used. But interestingly enough, they're also the most widely misused. So if you're going to be using these motions, I'm just asking you, pleading with you, begging with you, remove some of the pain and the stumbling blocks by committing to learn these 3 very basic motions. Now, these motions are the main motion, amendments, and amend the amendment. Let me say it one more time. The main motion, amendment, and amend the amendment. Now, if you already know how to do these 3 basic motions, I applaud you. But what I want you to think about doing is how are you going to teach your board members how to use these 3 basic motions? Because it's not enough for you to know them. You've got to make sure everybody on your board at least knows these 3 motions so that you can start having more productive meetings. So let's talk a little bit about the main motion. The main motion is how you really bring business to the assembly. Before you have a main motion on the floor, you're just talking about information. And while information is important, it's not business. You transition into business by making what is called a main motion. The main motion starts with I move. Go ahead and say it with me. I move. So simply stated, I move. What are we going to move? Let's say I move to purchase 1 DVD for our organization. So now you've got business that's being put before the assembly. As you may recall from the DVD, after you have a main motion on the floor, you have to take what's called a second. Is there a second to the main motion to purchase 1 DVD for our organization? Once the main motion has been properly moved and seconded, now you can have what I call focused discussion. Now, in my opinion, this should be the new F word. It's focus, people. It's all about creating focus. Think about how powerful a laser is because it can focus. So many boards lose their power because they're not able to focus collectively. They get all screwed up and end up going off topic because people aren't focused in a common direction. The main motion helps us to have a focused discussion to ultimately make a collective decision. Now, let's talk about the next motion. So if the main motion brings business before the assembly so that we can have focused discussion about that motion, what is an amendment? Now, let me just back up as I say this. The main motion is the motion. Every other motion you're going to make using Robert's Rules of Order is about supporting that main motion. So an amendment is either going to add to or subtract from the main motion. So let me give you an example of what an amendment can look like. So if we chose to purchase how many DVDs? 1 DVD. We can amend the motion by maybe striking out 1 and inserting 3. So now the amendment is really about talking about how many DVDs we're going to buy. Now again, the amendment helps us to have focused discussion about the mini changes that we would like to make to the what? The main motion. So the amendment is supporting the actual main motion, how robust it's going to be, actually what it's going to say. So let's just think about how important those amendments are. Now, why are making amendments so important? And I want to just kind of put this out there. How do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. The reality is, while we want boards to move quickly, they cannot make quick decisions. They have to do it 1 manageable bite-sized chunk at a time. And that's really what an amendment is. It's a manageable bite-sized chunk of change that we want to make to the main motion. So as a board, we need to collectively agree on this amendment or disagree on this amendment before we go back down and we start discussing the main motion. Now, let me take it 1 step further. There is then amend the amendment. When I go in and I work with my organizations, these are the 3 motions that I make sure everybody understands because they really are the building blocks that help you have great meetings. If you don't know how to make a main motion, an amendment, and an amendment to the amendment, then you're going to waste time and you're going to ultimately waste money and you're going to create a lot of frustrated people in the progress. So if our amendment, well, let's go backwards. Our main motion was what? To purchase 1 DVD. Then there was an amendment that was made. The amendment was to strike out 1 and insert 3. Now, right now, we're only talking about the number. So I can't come in and make another amendment about what type of DVD. I need to keep it about the quantity. So it's about specific change. So how can I amend this amendment? Make another small, manageable change so that we can talk about it before we vote on it. That's right. I can maybe increase the number of DVDs that I want to buy. So maybe I move to amend the amendment by striking out 3 and inserting 6. Boy, see if I can hold all these, right? And inserting 6. So now what we're talking about is having focused discussion about the 6, the quantity, the number of instructional DVDs that we want to buy for the organization. Now take a deep breath. This is a lot of information, and I'm not expecting you to get the main motion, the amendment, and the amendment to the amendment all in this one video. What I'm hoping to do is to create a case about the importance of really committing yourself and your board to learning these 3 basic motions. You can do that by calling me, and I can provide coaching to your chairs or your
All right, we don't need the
I wanted to call her.
She's pretty exciting.
You haven't even seen her exciting video.
I know, right?
She has a very helpful science called Robert's Rules.
I wrote it down.
However, I will caution you, she ended up getting divorced, I don't know, a number of years ago, and so it's got a little man-hatey. We went on to Robert's Rules and got a little man-hatey. So, gosh, go to the older videos, not her recent videos. And she got some good help on it.
Well, we all go through things, I guess.
So we just don't always put them on the
Apparently.
On YouTube YouTube channel called Robert's Rules Made Simple.
That's, oh, boy.
Okay. Let's talk about a motion called Call the Question. Has anyone heard of that before?
I didn't hear what you said.
Yeah,
Call the question.
Motion.
yes, I've heard of that.
Okay. All right, so we're going to watch another video, hope it comes through, and then we're going to talk about Call the Question later. It's a helpful tool. We don't use it very often, but it's something that could be helpful as well, especially if you want to like get back on track. There's a couple ways to get back on track. This is a good one.
Right.
Okay.
Let's see what we got next here. Oh, I'm gonna spend, how many of you use parliamentary procedure?
You guys hear it okay?
In your office, or in your executive committee?
Yes.
All right.
1, 2.
Here and there.
Here and there. So there's some, there's pages and pages of details about parliamentary procedure, but there are some very simple rules that if you follow them will make it much easier to make things happen in a productive way. So any topic on an agenda can be discussed, but if you want to have action, somebody has to create a motion. And when I tell people that, they say, oh, I motion. No, you don't motion. I move is the way you create a motion. I move that we adjourn at 4 o'clock. No, I motion that we adjourn at 4 o'clock. So you make a motion. I move that. A motion needs a second. So the leader says, is there a second? It's been moved, and you repeat exactly what the motion was. Is there a second? If there is no second, okay, let's go on and discuss something else. Or maybe there's another solution we want, or another motion we will entertain. But if there is a second, it's been moved and seconded, let's discuss it. And then you discuss, don't you? And sometimes you discuss, and people start saying the same things over and over again, and it gets to be boring. There is a way out of that. And that is if somebody is smart enough to call the question. So you say, I call the question. What does that mean? Calling the question requires a vote. Calling the question means I want to stop this discussion and go and vote on the thing we're discussing. That's what calling the question means. So you say, if I say, if Donald says to me, I call the question, and I'm the chairman, I say, okay, we have a motion to call the question, which means to end the discussion. Is there a second for that motion? Glenn says yes. Well, Glenn would never say yes to any discussion. Let's say Glenn says yes, I second that motion. Then you vote on calling the question. You vote on ending the discussion. All in favor of ending the discussion? Aye. All opposed? No? Okay, the ayes have it. We end the discussion. Let's now vote on the issue. And then you go back to the motion that you were discussing. So you moved, seconded, then you want to end it. And because, I don't know about you, but I've been in meetings where this goes on and on and on, and people say the same thing but with a slightly different, and eventually everyone's going to sleep. Have you all had that happen? Stop it. Now, the chairman should never be the one who calls the question. But the chairman can say, I would entertain a motion to call the question. And then if somebody agrees with the chairman, they'll do it. The chairman basically should avoid taking sides on an issue. So discussion ends when there's nothing more to say. Sorry, that's a typo. Or when someone calls the question. Then vote on the actual motion. Now, here's the chairperson's job is to keep order and to follow the agenda, but not to take sides on an issue. So if you've got an issue that's raging, do we move the club to a new location, or do we stop? We've discussed it and so forth. But if the chairperson wants to express their opinion, he should pass the gavel to someone else and say, will you chair the meeting until we're through with this discussion? Because I want to. Now somebody else is in charge and has the authority. And now I can say things and I don't carry the same weight as when I'm the chair.
Can the chairperson call the question?
No, the chairperson should not call the question. The chairperson can say, I would entertain a motion to call the question. But he can't actually do it himself. That way, if the chairperson is the only one who wants to end the discussion and everybody else wants to keep talking about it, then you got to keep talking about it. Or if the chairman does call the question and there's no second, drop it. But the best way to do it is to follow the rule, and don't do that. Thank you.
Do it.
Now there's hundreds more things, but those are the very simple basics of getting things done in a meeting and keeping the meeting moving along. Okay?
Is this all Robert's Rules of Order?
These are from Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules of Order is a very specific book, this thing. And it's the way Congress runs itself with all the stuff they've added, which is, I'm sure Robert would approve of some of it. But parliamentary procedure is a slightly different term. Robert's Rules of Order is parliamentary procedure. Parliamentary procedure can be more or less than Robert's Rules of Order. You can, at Fry's and other places, you can buy those $5.
All right, so that was pretty much done. All right, so call the question. Any questions on calling the question?
I like it.
Call the question. Let's go ahead and vote. We're getting redundant now, is usually what it's used for. All right, another one is called point of order. Anyone heard of that? Used that?
Yes.
All right, we've got another video on point of order. Shorter video.
Hi, Susan Leahy here from RobertsRulesMadeSimple.com. Welcome to another episode of Robert's Rules Revealed. Today, we're going to be talking with fellow parliamentarian Lorenzo Cuesta as we answer key questions about Robert's Rules of Order. Now, before we start, make sure that you've subscribed to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a single episode. All right, so we're on the phone today with Lorenzo Cuesta from roberts-rules.com, and we're going to be talking about a really important tool that a lot of people don't use properly in meetings, and that's how to make a point of order. So we're going to talk to Lorenzo about when and how to make a proper point of order. So hi, Lorenzo, how you doing?
Good evening. Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're glad you're here too. So let's talk a little bit about point of order, because I think that sometimes, we've all heard about point of order, but sometimes people don't know how or when to make it. So first of all, what is a point of order?
Every member has the obligation of making sure that all the rules are followed.
Yes.
If a member believes that some rule is violated, he has the obligation of speaking up and making a motion by yelling, point of order, and putting a stop to this violation.
And I like the word obligation, obligation. And this isn't about telling anybody that they're wrong. It's the obligation that the rules are being properly followed. That fundamentally feels different for me. And so I'm glad you're bringing that up. So now, if I'm in a meeting and I see that maybe something's going wrong, or we're debating a motion that we're not, the wrong motion, I stand up, I say point of order, and then how should the chair respond?
Very good. As soon as you yell out, point of order, interrupting everyone and not expecting a second and not allowing debate or amending, the chair has the obligation of stopping everything and turning to you and asking you, please state your point. Then you get a chance to explain what you believe is violated, and he gets the chance to tell you your point is well taken and then correct it, or your point is not well taken and moves on, ignoring your statement.
Yeah, and I want to say that when you're saying the point of order, you're not saying, it's not a personal attack that you're making on the chair. This is not about you're wrong. It's that something in the process isn't being followed. So I think that the energy in which you're using point of order is so important, because in meetings, and I don't know when I'm working with customers, and I'm sure that when you're working with your clients, it's that sense of the chair is actually on the same team as you. So, when you're calling a point of order, it can be intimidating. So again, remember, it's not to make a personal attack, it's just to make sure that the process is being followed, right?
Exactly. It's even more than that. The chair should welcome anyone correcting what's going on, because after all, you are all there to protect the rights of the members and to make sure that the proper transaction of business occurs, and the chair should be very gracious and accept corrections so we can move on.
Ooh, and I like these words that you're using are giving me the chills, Lorenzo. It's that sense of they should welcome this type of interaction, that it's okay, that it's about the process. And then I really like that word, and I'm going to bring it up again, that you said that the member has the obligation to make sure that the process is being followed. So, Lorenzo, thank you for shedding some light on what I think can sometimes be.
All right. Any thoughts on point of order?
What if you're, okay, so I am the new clerk, and I didn't know I was going to be the one running the meetings because she was running them first.
Okay.
And And she was saying that I'm the one that could call a point of order. Is that right? Or I'm not the one. Am I allowed to call the point of order or not? The other members have to call the point of order.
I think it'd be the other members. Are you the,
I'm taking the minutes. I'm the clerk, so.
Doing the roll
so
call.
are you gonna act as the presiding officer? Or the facilitator of the meeting?
Well, I don't know. She was saying that it was my job to do that, and so I'm trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
So if
So
I'm
if
the
you're-
one that's the chairman,
Yeah, if you're chairing the meeting, if you're the one facilitating the meeting and acting kind of in charge of those motions, then no, the chairperson should not be calling the point of the
Okay.
order. The others should.
the others should.
Yeah.
Okay.
That being said, as the chair, you have the responsibility to keep it on track. So if someone starts to sway or, go off topic, you can say, we're going to bring it back to the main motion, which is, and you can just restate the motion.
Restate the motion.
Try to get them back on track. The motion is, this is what we're talking about. And so
So I can
guide
just
it,
redirect
right?
them to the motion. I don't have to say
Right.
point of order.
Right.
Okay.
As the chairperson, you'd simply use objective language like, council member shall discuss the matter at hand. Like say Selena's just going off. I'm never going to call out Selena. I'm just going to say members shall address the topic at hand only. And it's just an objective statement of like the rule, the expectation. And somebody else, if they wanted to rise to a point of order, so you're going crazy again, would be point of order. Members are speaking on topics that are not up for our discussion.
Not
So
part of
again,
the
because
motion.
it's never about the person, never
Okay.
about it.
So don't call out that person.
Because then you just get it, it's a spitting match instead of like, no, this is about, like sometimes there's a deep rule of members shall not speak twice on a matter until everyone has the opportunity to speak once. So rise to a point of order. Not all members have had a chance to speak before other members are speaking for a second time. And then the chair, whoever's managing the meeting, would think about that rule, think about the description of what's happening, and either the point is well taken, which is mind your P's and Q's, or the point is not well taken, you were wrong, go crazy.
We're going to continue with the craziness because it's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Or it wasn't crazy, it was just fine.
Yeah, Dan just thinks I'm crazy, so it wasn't everyone.
No one else thought
Okay.
that.
No one else thought that. So Dan, if she were to reply with the point is well taken, then how would you kind of point them in the right direction? Like what would that language sound like?
So it'd just be like restating, so the chair would consider it. Point is well taken. Members shall make sure to direct their comments to the matter at hand.
Or a singular
topic.
comment to the topic at hand, or
Members shall not speak twice on a matter until all members have had opportunity to speak once. Members shall refrain from speaking until they've been recognized. And the rules are kind of there for like, kind of think of like bigger, more chaotic experiences, not like our small, more friendly ones, but they're designed so that if things are challenging or confrontational, these rules can allow the free flow of ideas that are focused and germane to whatever that topic or business is.
gotcha. Thank you.
That helps me because I've never been the chair.
Yeah. And parliamentary procedures, specifically Robert's rules, like it really is a very thick book, and there's lots and lots of different.
And I've only
motions.
done very basic.
Yeah, I would just start basic because almost always you're just going to use a few of those rules, and you're going to find with your own body that there's ones that just seem to work better, and everybody's more comfortable working within these few items. So like in purely Robert's rules, like a member is supposed to say, Madam Chair or Chair, and then be recognized and then take the floor. And we don't really do that step.
Yeah.
And so it's there if you kind of need that more formalness. Like it's there to use if you need it. And if you're functioning okay without it, then just continue to function as you are. Just like the, no member, everyone should have the opportunity to speak before someone speaks for the second time. That's a really good rule. And if you have someone that's a real bulldozer that just,
takes over
the meeting, that's a good time to say, before you speak again, we're going to see if anyone else has anything to say. And so the rules are there for you to use, the ones that are helpful in your situation, in your meeting.
Okay.
And I think something that I've observed is even if you don't end up being the one who's facilitating the meeting, it's so important to know these things so that you can help whoever the presiding.
Yeah, because I didn't know I was supposed to be doing the meeting when I first started. I was like, because she was the chair because I wasn't there yet.
She was chairing. That's
Yeah.
why.
and so I'm like, oh wait, is this supposed to be me? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And
Okay.
Perhaps as the dynamic changes or ebbs and flows, you'll be able to help them know how to handle and run a meeting. It'll be good.
All right. Oops. I don't think that's what I was sharing. Sorry, I picked the wrong thing. What were we doing? Parliamentary procedure, right? Okay, can everybody see table versus postpone?
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
great. All right, so table versus postpone, both do similar things, but one is preferred motion over the other. So both of these are usually used if you want to stop talking about a certain thing and pick it up at a later date. So you've been talking about a certain item, you kind of talked as much as you can that night. And so you want to postpone it or table it until a different meeting. So the preferred motion would be postpone. So let's go over table first, and then we'll go over the postpone. So a motion to table stops debate. It goes for an immediate vote. There's no discussion or debate, no debate or discussion about tabling it. You don't amend it. So it goes straight to a vote. So it stops it and goes straight to a vote to table. Okay. Once an item is tabled, there has to be a motion to pick it back up off the table. So it's not a routine thing. The body has to act to pull that back off of the table. If that motion is not pulled back off the table by the end of the following meeting, then it's dead. It dies, it goes away, and it's not brought up again. It'll have to be brought up as a new motion, as a new item. So it's often perceived or used in a sneaky way to kill something that you don't want to flat out kill. So if you are tired of talking about something, but you don't want to look like a jerk and just kill that topic, people will use this motion as a sneaky way to table it and then let it die. And to me, that's not transparent, and it's not very inclusive, just for the fact that it goes for immediate vote. There's no discussion. So it's a tool you can use, and I hope you don't. The better motion is postpone. So the motion to postpone, it can be debated, it can be amended prior to voting. Motion to postpone must be given a time frame. So motion to postpone, generally, if you just say motion to postpone, it's going to automatically go on the next agenda. Okay, so your next regular agenda. So the assembly uses this often. So they introduce they move to postpone, and it automatically goes on the next agenda. It's just the timeline. It's kind of built in. However, if it was something, say that we needed to receive legal review for, or we needed to wait until we got a plat or a survey back from the surveyor to finish the discussion, the motion could be, I move to postpone until we receive legal review on this topic. And then it's kind of, you know, pinned right there until that action happens. So let's say it takes, you know, 45 days past the next regular meeting, but then we have our legal review before that, you know, 2 meetings away. So then once we receive the legal review, it would automatically come on that next regular meeting because that was the motion that was made. So then it will be on you, the clerk, Debbie, to remember, remember that timeline. But anyway, so it's more transparent. It's very clear. Everyone knows that you're stopping the discussion, but this is when you will hear it again.
Yeah, well, that's a lot.
Any thoughts on that one?
So let's say we have a postponement because we're waiting for Selena to get back to us, who's a public person. She's not on the council. She's going to get back to us next month. So, okay, fine. You're going to get back to us next month with more information about this, but doesn't get back to us. What happens then?
So
Well,
if they gave it a specific timeline, if they said
Oh, we'll get back to you at the next meeting.
next meeting.
You said that to us.
well, then it would come back up on the next meeting.
Yes.
And then it would be up to you guys if you postponed it again, or if you just,
What if what if she never got back to us with any information?
then it would be on the next agenda item. I mean, it'd be on the next agenda.
Yes.
But if she didn't show and you didn't have any information.
Yes.
If you wanted to kill it and not talk about it again.
Okay.
That motion would be postponed indefinitely.
Okay. Until she brought it back up again, maybe?
Yeah, and if your timeline is based on somebody else's action that you don't really have control over, you know, like a member of the public.
Yes.
I would recommend that you put it on the next agenda. If they don't show,
Yes.
you don't just keep putting it on.
No.
You just wait, and if they come back and say, I'd like to talk about it, then
you put it on next month. Okay.
Yeah, like legal, you're kind of paying them, you kind of expect that. If you've already ordered a survey and you're waiting on a survey.
That's a little different, yes.
You can be a little more vague in those type of timelines. But if it's someone that you don't have any control over, postpone it until the next meeting and then wait for
them to get back.
Okay. Keep losing my cursor. All right, so let's practice a little bit. So how do we end a meeting?
I move to adjourn.
Thank you. But we're not adjourning, just so.
I do not second that.
Another method, and the school board use it, is there being no further business, the meeting is adjourned.
Oh.
Simply a declaration of the chair. You've finished your agenda. There is nothing else to do. You're done.
You're done. Okay, so it's declared adjourned.
Yeah.
Okay.
There being no further business, the meeting is adjourned.
There being no further business,
done.
the meeting is adjourned.
Okay. All right.
People do like me moving to adjourn, but sometimes they're just waiting around and it's like, well, someone just tell us we can leave.
Oh, you know, we usually have a battle for who gets to make that motion on the assembly. That's the only one people are excited.
We were dragging our feet even on that one. So when I saw the meeting, no further business, I jumped on it.
Yeah, good. That's a good point. All right, but if it is made as a motion, it does require a second. It can be debated, and then apparently the chairperson can just be done. We're done with this meeting.
There you go, Dave.
Yeah.
All right, how would you temporarily pause an agenda item? Kind of giving you the answers in bold.
Postpone.
Right. Yeah, you could use table. You can. It's a real motion. It's there. The preferred one is postpone. You could use either one of those. And how do you kill an agenda item?
Indefinite.
Move to postpone indefinite.
Yeah. And if you don't know Robert's rules, that can be confusing. You don't really know what that means. And so it's not, and I don't know. Most people don't go, oh, so you're never going to talk about that again. Once you've been on a board or assembly, then you'll know what that means. But it's an effective, yet not obvious way to kill emotion.
It has more positive language than.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it discussed as like, again, a slightly sneaky way to kill something, where it's like, if you don't want something, you vote no.
I was gonna say, you can just,
Like if
Force
there's
the
a
vote
motion
and
and it's
vote it
like, you know what, the answer is no. And the majority votes no, that kills
done.
it, like, we're done.
Yes.
It's really clear, but postponing indefinitely it's just sitting there. Saying like, we're never gonna talk about it again unless other people bring it back up, but.
Okay.
Does it, that takes the onus off of the clerk to keep putting it on the agenda, right? They don't have to do that
it won't go
anymore.
back on the
Okay.
agenda.
I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding.
Yeah, and this actually is the one that the assembly uses.
Yes.
Now they have voted things down before. It's not that they haven't, but they do use postpone indefinitely. All right, how do I stop discussion and vote?
I call the question.
All right, call the question. It does require a second and it's not debated. So it's going to go, so as soon as someone seconds it, it's going to go for a vote. The vote needs to be 2/3 vote to pass. So more than that simple majority. And so even though the math doesn't work out exactly as 2/3 for bodies of 7, which now the school board and assembly are, that would be 5 versus 4. So we need 5 votes to call the question, go straight to the vote on the main motion. Any questions on that? Okay, how do I get the discussion back on topic?
Point of order.
You gotta yell it though,
Loud
right?
and proud. All right, so this is one that the presiding officers, whoever runs it, so Debbie, you should take note that if it's called, like you have, it kind of falls in your field. It's now your authority to, take the point, ask them, what's your point? And they can, a lot of times, I'm rambling here. Often this is just where you've gotten off topic, and it happens at a lot of meetings. You're talking about one thing and then somehow you end up straying onto a different topic and then a different topic, and they all somehow tie back to the main topic, but you're definitely not talking about what that motion or action is anymore. And so that is when I could see this being used the most often, is to try to get it back on topic. So if you guys are now talking, you were talking about the preschool that you were liking, and now all of a sudden you're talking about, but the clinic's not even open, and that's a real concern. Has nothing to do with it, and yet you naturally progress to that topic.
And we should get bike paths.
We should get bike paths, I agree. If someone at that moment were to say point of order, everyone at the table would know what the point was. We're obviously off a topic. We obviously are now talking about something that we weren't intending to talk about. And so the chair can ask, what's your point? A lot of the times you're going to know what the point is. We're off topic. You're right. Point well taken. Let's get back on topic. And the motion was rephrase the motion, regroup, back on topic. If let's say for some reason the presiding officer really, really wanted to talk about the clinic and not the preschool, and said, no, point's not well taken, we're going to keep talking about this, the body can vote to overrule that decision and get back on track. So if the presiding officer said, no, point's not well taken, you can appeal that decision. Someone can appeal that decision. That goes to a vote of the body, and they can overrule the presiding officer's decision with a majority vote. It doesn't take that super majority. All right. Good?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, how's everybody doing? Anybody need a break?
I'm good.
Good, pretty good, okay.
Good.
All right, because now we're gonna get even more exciting and jump into ethics.
Woohoo!
Yeah?
I don't.
Oh gosh, that thing again.
All right, I wonder if that means that the videos won't play. So when I get that warning, that's when the videos won't play. Okay,
Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
right. I'm gonna mess around with it. So I will email out these PowerPoints so you guys can go back and watch the videos, and then I will put them on our website somewhere, probably on the assembly page. Anyways, we will just skip it
Yeah,
and
that'd be.
not play with it. Okay, so she encouraged everybody to be ethical, to keep and maintain trust in the public have trust in their elected bodies. Okay. One thing to point out is laws and ethics are not always the same thing. So something can be legal and not ethical. So laws you should consider are like that minimum standard, like it's the base, the lowest bar that's set. You have to do this minimum. Ethical can be above and beyond that. So it's not always, legal is not always ethical. Sometimes you need to do more. All right, so we have some, well, here's some principles for ethical public servants. And that would be, there's no personal gain because of your position. The public interest should be the sole motivation, and public servants should not benefit financially from your position. Kind of some basic standards, basic principles of ethics. Nothing should be done in secret. So it's the public's business. It should be done in view of the public. And the public trusts the process that it can see, that it can observe. So transparency is key. There should be no perks, no special privileges for the public officials. So it doesn't necessarily need to be financial. If there's some other perk or benefit that shouldn't be happening because of the position you hold. There shouldn't be favoritism. It should be a fair process in decision-making. It should be fair in contracting, and it should be fair in employment. All right, I don't think this one's going to play either. Basically, this guy describes that 3 questions you should always ask yourself is it legal? Is it ethical? Would be the second question. And then you should ask yourself, how will this look if it's reported in the newspaper? Like what would how could the public view this if it was reported in the newspaper? So if you are trying to keep those 3 things in mind, it will help you make the most ethical decision. What are people going to say or see through this process, through this decision, whatever.
One of the things the person interviewing him asks is, how do you kind of gain the public's trust so that if there were an article or something published that could possibly look unfavorable, like how do you rebut that? And basically what he said is, have ethical behavior all the time so that you earn the benefit of the doubt. Like you have to earn the benefit of the doubt by your behavior 100% of the time. And I thought that was a really good point.
Yeah. All right, so we have a few things built into our code, and I imagine the school district has some as well. The city, I'm less familiar with the city code. So I'm not sure what you have, but for us, we have a financial disclosure, and it applies to planning commissioners, assembly members, and school board members. It's due April 15th every year. We've transitioned it to an online form. We've tried to make it as easy as possible, but we do have a financial disclosure form built into our ethical toolbox, I guess you'll call it.
What does it ask for?
And we were required to do it, honestly. The state developed one, and everybody had to comply unless you developed your own financial disclosure. And here at Denali, we decided to hold that information ourselves instead of send it to someone with the state.
What does it ask, Amber?
It asks a lot. It asks who holds your money, who holds your investments. It asks who you owe money to. I'm trying to think. It's fairly detailed in your personal finances, which I
Yeah, basically assets and liabilities.
Yeah.
Mm.
What property you own,
Yep.
where it is.
Thank you.
All right, and then another ethical tool that we have in the Denali Borough Code, this, like I said, the school district probably has one, and we have no minimum. We are to receive no gifts. You can't accept any gift for any dollar amount. And we actually have had people bring like chocolate here. We do passports here, and we've helped some people that really needed a passport really fast, and they're appreciative. And so they brought some chocolates in. And so instead of us keeping the chocolate, we put it on the front desk so the public can use it. Full disclosure, I did have some, but
But it was for everybody.
It was for everybody, and we left it available for everybody. So sometimes you can't control when people come and drop off chocolate for you, and you just don't keep it personally. All right, we do have an ethics commission. It's and this written in code, and there's actually a pretty lengthy process that's described in code as well. So just the highlights are that the borough designates the clerk and or mayor as the ethics officer. So that would be the first point of contact if there was a complaint, would be the clerk or mayor. And if it required, there would be an investigation into the complaint. If the ethics officer believes there is a violation, or if the complainant is not happy with the investigation, then it would go up to the ethics commission, which is the assembly. And the assembly would then determine if they were going to investigate or what their next steps would be. All right, conflict of interest prohibitions. So you cannot use your position as an elected official to obtain personal gain. That includes financial gains, gifts, in-kind benefits, or any other thing of value. Okay. Cannot vote or participate in any official action on an item in which you or a family member have a financial interest. You also shouldn't debate that item. If you're not going to vote, you shouldn't join in the debate of that or the discussion of that item. You cannot use municipal time, facilities, equipment, or supplies for personal or private gain. And you cannot use or disclose any information that you've obtained through your position as an elected official to seek financial gain for yourself or any other person or any other entity. What not to do. So here's some red flags.
I wanted to point out a difference with the school board.
Yeah.
On that. So conflict of interest, if there is a conflict of interest, there's the expectation to disclose that like prior to a vote, but then there's actually procedure in board policy where the rest of the members would then discuss and could, through an affirmative vote, have the person vote on that issue. So say your spouse is covered by a contract that's being considered. You would probably want to disclose that because your family financial gain. But the rest of the board would sit there and go like, yeah, everybody in the borough knows that. And they elected you. Your job is to decide these things. If that was an issue, then maybe the electorate would have made a different choice. Or you might look around and go, we have to do this business that is in front of us. And if you don't vote, we can't have a majority. So we are deciding that you shall participate. Because the expectation is an elected official participates in those debates and votes. That's like the job of the elected official. If for whatever reason, and so there's no, like, you should not abstain from something because you just don't feel like voting.
Right.
And then also with board policy, if for some reason, like you're there and you don't vote, your vote is actually recorded in the prevailing side. And every once in a while we get kind of interesting when we get on like some low attended meetings where we're doing things like approving a contract where a member's spouse is there and we're like, okay, well, it's 4-0. So the prevailing side, you're on the prevailing side and that's 5. So now 5 was a majority of the 9, so it passes. So some stuff like that, but there's, again, it's outlined in procedure in our policies.
All right, so some red flag situation. Your immediate family member own land or buildings that will be affected by a vote or official action. That would be a red flag to consider. Your immediate family member may be part of a contract that will be affected by a vote or action. You're an immediate family member own or part owner or otherwise have a financial interest in a business that will be affected. You are on the governing body or management team of an organization that will be affected. Your immediate family member are offered gifts, money, in-kind benefits, or anything that could be seen as an attempt to influence your vote. You use or authorize use of municipal equipment, facilities, or supplies for personal private gain. That's an obvious red flag situation. All right, so disclosure. That's what you do. Just like Dan was saying, if there's a red flag situation, if something creeps into your mind, like, I think I have a conflict, your responsibility is that you disclose it. You tell the rest of the members. When people cringe to talk about ethics, I'm like, it's so simple.
Just tell it. Remind
yourself you're not doing anything in secret. And if you feel you have a conflict, even if the rest of the body decides you don't, you've disclosed it. That's all your responsibility. And it's kind of like earlier when we're talking about, laying stuff on the table, you can kind of think of it like that. Like, I think I might have a conflict. I'm going to lay it on the table. Everyone that's here can see what it is. And then ours goes to the presiding officer. So that if you say, I've got this conflict, you can either flat out recuse yourself or you can just leave it there. And then the presiding officer can determine if that rises to the level of recusal or if it doesn't. And so that would be for the presiding officer. And then the body can overrule that decision if the body thinks that it should. But you're putting it out there, that's your responsibility. And then what happens from there is up to the body. You've put it out there. So that's it. So then what I just described happens next. You put it out there, presiding officer makes a decision, and then you vote, don't vote, whatever. Again, what I would caution is that if you recuse yourself, say that you shouldn't, it's confirmed or affirmed that you're right, you shouldn't, that means you shouldn't join in the discussion or the debate of that topic either. So as they continue to talk, you just sit there quietly, go use the restroom, whatever you need to do, but just stay out of the discussion and the vote.
And Amber, I have a question about that. It kind of goes to what Dan was talking about in terms of the board and a no vote and how a no vote is treated. If in this case, a recusal, that wouldn't be treated as a no vote in terms of the assembly, right? In terms of the no vote would then go to the prevailing vote of the other members of the body. It just doesn't count in the total tally. Is that correct?
Yeah, so how I would record that would be the vote passed 4-2 with 1 recused, is how I would say it.
Okay.
Dan's correct though, if it came down to it and that was, let's say there was only 4 of you there and it would need 4 votes to pass, that would be harder to where you could be asked to vote so the action could be taken. You essentially would be removing the opportunity for a quorum to even be established for that vote.
Oh.
And so that's a situation. If you could postpone it and hope more members showed up the next time, that would be
right.
ideal. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Got it.
Right. They might say, we know you have a conflict and we need your vote anyways. And that would be noted.
Right.
What if the vote was divided and it was 3-3 and that person excused themselves from the vote? So the vote's tied and we have 7.
So the vote's tied with 1 recused.
Yes.
Well, I guess the 2 things, it could either go down as a fail or the presiding officer could overrule their own ruling and say, in this situation, we require your vote.
Okay.
Or a motion could be made to move it to the next meeting.
Or you could
to
postpone it if you can. Absolutely.
Okay.
And in the
Yeah.
assembly, a tie vote could be broken by the mayor.
That's actually what
That's true. That's true.
I was just gonna ask that too. I was like, wasn't there a situation where Clay had to?
Yeah. So that's the only time that in our structure as the borough, there's only one time that the mayor would be called to vote, and that is in the case of a tie, the tie-breaking vote.
Yeah.
Vote in all of our stuff?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
It's
That's
just
a
different.
It's a
bylaws.
it's a different.
We're a
thing.
city, not a borough.
Yeah,
Okay.
So that's written in our charter and code.
Yes.
And so you're going to have your own
We
structure.
have our own little.
Yeah. Yeah. And I believe that your mayor does vote.
Yeah, it's similar in the sense that like our assembly is elected, and then amongst the assembly, they designate the presiding officer and then the next, the deputy presiding officer. But you guys vote for your members, but then that group votes for the mayor.
Yes.
So she would also be a voting member in that sense. It's not a separate election like ours is.
No.
And that is a good question for me on if there's a recusal that creates a tie, what then? I don't know.
Well, and
The mayor would come.
I think the mayor would
would
be called on to vote
Yes.
in that situation.
And I would advise the school board that the motion has failed.
Oh, right, because you don't vote.
I don't vote
And
and the tie vote
Oh.
fails. Vote's done, motion failed, next item of business.
Moving on. I think one of the things we talked about during the conflict of interest part in our training that we did on Saturday was the interesting dynamic small communities make. Because we do end up in positions where board members are voting on things that do technically impact their spouse or their children because their children are employees of the school district, and assembly members might have a spouse, family member, child, something that's impacted by something, but it's kind of the nature of having such small communities. So just being really transparent and making sure everyone else is aware that you might have a conflict.
Because you're going to have conflict.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be conflict. It's too small of a community not to on some decisions. There is one thing I want to point out here, and that is if a conflict of interest is discovered after the action has been taken, we call it curing the conflict. A way to cure the conflict after a vote has happened is to take a vote again. And knowing what the action was, knowing what the conflict was, kind of doing a redo, take two. And this time having that conflict declared and recused or not recused, but at least addressed formally in a public meeting to cure that conflict, to make it clean.
Is there a statute of limitations on that? Like how much time can pass?
No, there's
Um,
not, and you know, some decisions you just can't redo. You've already offered a contract, then
Right.
months later, after the work's already been done, it's been declared. At that point, that's when you just, as a body, just need to state it, point it out, highlight it in a public meeting that this happened. We realized there was a conflict. We're more aware. You know, it's just being transparent that
right.
now realize that there was some action that could be seen as unclean, and we want to make it as clean as we can. So sometimes you just can't undo something. And either way, you just do it in a public meeting, even if there's nothing you can do
Right.
but admit guilt.
And is that something you would put on the agenda?
Sure, yeah.
And how would you word that?
Oh, how would I word that? It would be an other business item, and it would say something like
Clarification?
Disclosure of conflict of interest.
Disclosure of conflict of interest of a previous action, something like that. All right, so this guy, the video that we can't watch right now, just talks about social media and kind of the ethical things that have come up from that. And essentially, he just highlights that the rules of ethics haven't changed because of social media. They just are expanded. You know, they're highlighted, or even the consequences of a conflict of interest can be more profound. Just that if you say something that you shouldn't have said, do something you shouldn't do, and it's caught and distributed on social media, like it goes so far so fast. However, even if it hadn't gone so far so fast, you know, the rules still apply. It's the same rules that still apply. And as public officials, you just need to be really aware of that, and I don't know, extra cautious what you post.
One of the things that you talked about was really similar to what Amber said earlier about your personal email versus borough or school district email. And he said, if you feel like you have something that you need to say about politics or religion, or, you know, whatever it might be, make sure that you think about what that's going to say about you, for one, and that you are always doing that on only your personal accounts, not anything that reflects you as an assembly member, school board member, or something like that, but just your personal accounts within your personal group of friends, not on like the Healy page or the Anderson page or something like that, but just your personal account only. Which doesn't keep it from ending up on those pages, but at least you didn't put it there. When in doubt, do not do it.
Yeah, just don't do it.
All right, so let's go through some scenarios, and we're going to remember to think of three things. Is it legal? Is it appropriate? And what will it look like to others? So those are kind of the parameters to view different scenarios through. So Casey serves on the city council and volunteers unpaid on the board for the local youth soccer association. The soccer association submits a grant application for a city grant that will be reviewed and approved by the city council. Does Casey have a conflict of interest, and what should Casey do? And this is a real scenario. Our assembly provides grants to nonprofits, and a lot of our members also volunteer for some of these nonprofits. And so this is they're volunteers, they don't get paid. They you know, sweat, blood and tears for this organization, and yet they have some of that ex parte communication. They usually are aware of the grant application before it's even submitted. They are intimately aware of either the project or the use of those funds. So they do hold more information than the rest of the members because of that position, even though they are volunteer and unpaid.
I'd say it's a gray area.
So
But-
we're going to call it an ethical dilemma.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And the public could view the scenario as a conflict of interest, and therefore we should consider it. So even though she receives no financial compensation, she should still disclose that service when they're talking about it and make sure that everyone's aware of that she is involved, she does have information, and she is unpaid.
But doesn't require recusal?
If I were the presiding officer, I would say not. She's not paid. She has no financial compensation.
But it's the disclosure that's the
Yes.
important thing.
But just being disclosed, yeah, being transparent about it.
Transparent and just acknowledging, like, I know, and a lot of you know that I sit on this board and we're considering this.
Right.
All right, Henry serves on the Borough Assembly. One night while Henry is out to dinner with his family, he notices his neighbor eating at a table nearby. Henry and his neighbor visit briefly, and when Henry finishes his meal, the restaurant server tells him that his neighbor has already paid for the meal. The next month, Henry notices that the same neighbor that recently paid for his meal has a commercial use permit on the assembly agenda for consideration. Does Henry have an ethical dilemma, and what should Henry do?
Yes, he does.
Yep. He has an ethical dilemma. The public could view that paid dinner as an exchange for consideration of that permit. So even though he didn't know, he was unaware of the gift, didn't ask for it, didn't even know it was happening, he still needs to disclose that his neighbor has bought him dinner before in the recent time frame, and let the body decide if that is a conflict worth recusal. All right, Jessica is on the school board. She and her husband also own and operate a landscaping business. The school district advertises to receive bids for a landscaping contract for the school buildings. Jessica and her husband submit a bid for the landscaping contract. Okay or not okay, and what should she do?
Not okay.
Not okay.
All right, it's not okay. As school board member, Jessica could potentially be approving a contract to herself. Preferably, Jessica would withdraw her bid for the contract, but at a minimum, Jessica should publicly recuse herself from any vote regarding the contract, even if it's not awarded to her. So even if they determine to go with someone else and it ends up not being her, she still shouldn't vote on that just because she was involved. Now,
If she were to vote no, it could be perceived as like she voted that way because it wasn't
Yeah.
awarded to her.
Right.
Yeah. I was gonna say bitterness, but I
But
don't
if
think-
they're the only landscape company.
well,
in the-
that's the thing.
that-
Like, and Saturday
Yeah.
they were like, "Why doesn't she just not apply?"
Yeah.
And it's
They're
because
the only-
sometimes they're the only ones
Yes.
that can apply. They're the only ones that offer that opportunity. And so, like, there will be
Small
times-
town scenarios
there will be
again.
situations that there is overlap. There will be overlap. So, being as transparent as you can and as clean as you can in these types of situations is what's going to hopefully maintain the public's trust.
So this leads me to a question I didn't think of when we did this on Saturday, but thinking back on when you were talking about taking the minutes, because this would need to be very transparent to someone looking back at the minutes later, would you take a slightly more detailed
Yeah, well, for any of these, like
Okay.
any type of recusal and declaration of
Okay.
conflict is gonna receive
More detailed discussion.
more detail,
In the
or
minutes.
it's gonna be identified in the minutes
Okay.
in some way. So I might not summarize any of the other conversation, but I am gonna note that
Okay.
that bit. A recusal is seen as an action. All right, so this actually happens. The borough mayor and the school superintendent meet for lunch to distribute the borough mandatory and allowable contribution funding in the form of a check. During lunch, the superintendent pays for the mayor's lunch. Okay or not okay?
Dan?
I just want to say,
So.
I don't. District.
Okay.
He pays with the district's money.
Yes, there you
That the borough is gonna give me.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not muddy at all.
Not at all.
So this is okay. And there's a reason why this is okay. A portion of the school funding is mandatory. A large portion of the school funding is mandatory, and the amount is not influenced by the mayor or the superintendent. There's no control over it. It's required by law.
Yeah.
We're going to pay this much. And it's far more than lunch.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if it's a bribe, it's dang effective. It's a value, it's a value proposition. It's also, I mean, it's something that we mentioned quite freely, you know, in terms of like, you know, we had the lunch where we got the big check and we picked up the little check. Something that we talk about in front of both bodies.
Yeah.
Well, and does it matter at all that like when the mayor goes to that lunch, the check is written? It's not like the lunch is going to influence the amount of the check. The amount is already decided.
It's already been decided.
Yes. By the assembly.
Yeah, and so that's the second point. The allowable contribution amount is approved by the assembly and not the mayor. So even if it was just the allowable portion, just that other piece of the check, even that would be decided by the assembly and not the mayor.
So if the presiding officer comes, I've got to tell the presiding officer to pay for his own meal.
I'm pretty sure that mandatory is what gets paid. If you want to try.
Please come to lunch with us, but bring your own checkbook.
Yes, right. Go in Dutch. All right, Sally is on the planning commission. During the planning commission meeting, a number of Sally's neighbors expressed concern about a subdivision development. After the meeting, Sally asked some of the planning commission members to meet her and her neighbors for breakfast the next day to continue the subdivision development discussion. Okay or not okay?
Terrible idea.
It's not okay. It's a violation of the Open Meetings Act. Even if the number of commissioners do not reach that threshold of a quorum, it's still a continuation of body deliberation. Okay, so instead of Sally inviting some of the planning commissioner members to meet her and her neighbors for breakfast the next day, she emails each planning commissioner individually to share her views on the subdivision development discussion. Okay or not okay?
This is that cereal.
It's not okay. It would be referred to as a written serial communication, and it is a prohibited deliberation amongst members. So if she emailed a commissioner, oh, sorry if we're cutting out. I'm getting notice that our internet is unstable. So if she emailed,
yeah, it's kind of blurry font for me.
Okay. Anyways, it's in question, like how many commissioners could she email before it became a violation? Like there is some gray there. And the best thing to do is pick those valued, what do you call that when you're bouncing ideas off of each other?
Sounding board.
Sounding board.
Brainstorming.
Sounding boards, you know, limit the number if you can, especially when you're talking about business and or the governing body's business. And just be extra careful on this note. And please don't email each and every person, even if you do it separately, it will look the same if it was found out. So, and I will note that when I send information to the assembly, I usually do a blind CC, and that removes the opportunity for anyone to do a reply all. If it's a reply all, it'll actually just come back to me. So blind CC can be the clerk's friend. All right, how's everybody doing now? We're at 8:20.
Okay.
Doing better on time than we did on Saturday, so this is good.
Probably because we couldn't play the video.
Oh, because we can't watch the video. But I think the information's getting out there.
Yeah.
All right, the next thing on the agenda is I just wanted to circle back to that financial disclosure that it doesn't apply to the city of Anderson, but for planning commissioners, assembly members, and school board members. Those will be coming out by the end of February and due back April 15th. So watch for those. It's an online form. The nice thing is if nothing has changed in your finances in the last year, on the front page, you can just check the box and it takes you right to the signature page. You don't even have to review anything. So it's just if you need to update any of that information. All right. And then, so the next thing I want to talk about is some of the resources. And what I want to show you, well, first I'm going to tell you. So if you are a municipality, so that would be assembly, planning commissioner, and city council member, the Alaska Municipal League is your resource that you're going to go to. And the Alaska Municipal League offers a weekly, what do they call it, a legislative update. And it's an email that you subscribe to. And so you can just go on their website. Great website. They have so many resources. Everybody should be very familiar with the Alaska Municipal League. But you can subscribe to their legislative update. And so every Friday, you're going to get kind of a summary of what happened in the state legislature, and then a highlight of the schedule of it'll be when meetings are happening, when public comment is being received, all the different bills that are going to be discussed in the upcoming week. And so it keeps you informed. And if you want to weigh in on certain items, it'll explain to you and show you when and how you can weigh in on those. So it's a great resource to have to keep you plugged in. They offer lots more information, but just as a general rule, that legislative update kind of keeps you informed of what's being discussed in the state and things that could be relevant to your community.
Thinking that it has a link to, if you're interested, to get, they send out or a text occasionally for advocacy opportunities. So like school funding is on the floor. If you want to testify, give testimony about school funding, here's an advocacy time. Like this is when you could call in to give information, or this is where you can send it.
Another thing that AML does is they have 2 conferences a year. One is in February. It's the Fly-In Conference. So it's pretty much where you go. They have a few activities scheduled and planned, but it's mostly for you to come and meet with your legislators. And so let's see, we have Dominic, are you going to that?
Dominic?
Yes. Yes, I'll be attending with David Alexander and Chris,
and
of course.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's good. And then well, I guess it's December now. It used to be November. They have an annual conference, and the annual conference is great. If anyone can attend, it's great information. They always have a huge agenda, usually even conflicting sessions. Sometimes it's hard to decide which one you're most interested in. One thing they do have is they call it newly elected officials training, but I consider it just elected officials training, similar to this, but it's more broad. It's not like we kind of got deep into like what our code says and what the school does specifically. So this one is pretty Denali specific, but this one is more more broad and I think helpful and useful. I believe, Dominic, you've done that, haven't you?
Yeah, I've done first 2 years. I was elected. Yeah, it's a great resource and good for refreshers.
Yeah, and I know this year they did a really big chunk of time on just budgeting and accounting, which was really interesting. And it's probably more helpful for anyone that's not a newly elected official, actually, because it was a lot of terms and terminology that probably wouldn't make sense to a brand new elected official. But anyone that had served even just a year, you know, gone through one like budget cycle, I thought it was really interesting in a dry budgeting way, but helpful.
In dry budgeting kind of way.
So similarly, the school board has a very similar organization called the Alaska Association of School Boards. They also have, I believe it's a weekly update, isn't it?
Yeah.
A weekly update, an email you can subscribe to. And then they also have conferences. They have the legislative fly-in, which is coming up.
2 weeks.
And they also have an annual conference in November.
And weekly webinars for, again, trainings on things for newer experienced members. And they'll do kind of one-off training days as well. Like December, they usually do like a day focused on school law.
Oh, wow. Wow, nice. Yeah, so that's the Alaska Municipal League. And then now I was going to show everybody our websites. I don't have the City of Anderson's pulled up. But I'm going to show you the school district and the boroughs. I've got 2 PowerPoints open. It's weird. Does anyone see my?
It's your Chrome, that one.
This one?
And then you can pick.
Oh, okay, then I can pick. Okay. All right, so we'll start with the boroughs website. So, so when you go to, and I'm not sure if this is going to let me maneuver through. Sometimes only the people in the room can see it. So I've already landed on the meetings page of the borough website. So if you go to, if you on our homepage, you'd go to government and then assembly, there's a Denali Borough meetings information. Now this page, if you go to planning commission or if you even go to committees, it's all going to take you back to here. So we have one meetings page that, that all of our meetings agendas are posted to. And so if you scroll down, you can find the meeting you're interested in, and you just have to click on this little eyeball to pull up the agenda. And anything highlighted in blue is just a document that is, you know, relevant document for that agenda item. So that's ours. Dominic, can you see the meetings page, or do you just see can you see the agenda or the meetings page?
You can see the agenda.
Oh, good. Okay, good. It did let me maneuver. All right, so that's the boroughs. The school boards, you can see that I have a number of tabs open here, and that's because I wasn't sure it would let me navigate. So since it looks like it's going to let me navigate, we'll do it together. So on the school districts page, you'd go to Board of Education. Where they have, if you scroll down just a little bit under school board, it says board meetings, board docs. So that's the link that you're going to want to go to. And then on this page, this is the step I always forget. I get to this point and I go, wait, where was it again? And I've been to this site 1,000 times and it still gives me pause right here. So you go right here to meetings. Can everybody see that? Mm-hmm. And then same thing, you're going to find the meeting that you want. Let's go to the January 18th one. And then here you would view the agenda to see those items. So instead of the underline, it's just going to have a little document icon here that shows you where they have some documents associated. But those are good resources everyone should know so that you can be in the know of what's happening. City of Anderson, do you guys, you probably don't have an online platform, I'm
We
guessing.
do have a website.
Uh-huh.
I haven't figured out how to get on it and change anything on it yet,
Okay.
but
Okay.
that's on my list.
That's coming up on the long list.
It
Yes.
hasn't been updated since 2019 is what I've seen.
Okay, so stay tuned on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And
We're
so
trying.
do you do mostly like mail inform, like where would you post your agendas?
I noticed on our old site, there's a place where the agendas are supposed to be,
Mhm.
and it has each year, but you click on it, there's nothing there because nothing's really on there yet.
Okay.
But we're gonna work on that.
So right now we currently post it in the city building
Okay.
and on the City of Anderson official page.
City of Anderson official Facebook page?
Facebook page,
Facebook
yes.
page, okay.
Yes.
All right, and so those are your posting locations
Yes.
then, right now, okay, all right, and website to come.
Yes.
Okay. And then it's 8:30. The last thing I was gonna do is just briefly talk about the different, I guess, funding mechanisms for the borough and the school district. And honestly, I'm just gonna watch the Mondays with the Mayor that Clay did a number of years ago that did a quick, like, little 4-minute overview. So if you guys are up for that, great. If you have any questions and want to sign off, I'm gonna pause for a minute and you can do that now, because this is the last thing that we're gonna cover.
No, I'm good.
Let's do it.
All right, little Mondays with the Mayor. Oh, and I think I forgot to prep that, but I think that's okay. So in the meantime, you guys can see how we navigate to the Denali Borough YouTube page. And if you're looking for a previous meeting that was broadcast live, you're gonna have to search under the live link. That hangs up some people. They don't realize they need to go to that live link to get the live broadcasted meetings. So that's where most of our meetings are held, is under that live tab. But because it's a video we uploaded, it's under videos. And I think it was like 2 or
It's just
3.
Yeah,
to the right.
yeah, there's one on the.
There's several of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's episode 2 and 3 is what we're gonna hold.
These are words to work by. Supplies, solutions, support. Call clickgranger.com or just stop by.
Show your daughter how much you love her with this beautiful gift.
Dominic, are you guys?
It says,
All right, welcome to another installment of Mondays with the Mayor. Here in the Denali Borough office, I am Mayor Clay Walker, and happy to share more information about the Denali Borough. And we started in our first installment with a bit of the history of the origin of the borough, as we were established in 1990 as a home rule borough with limited powers and collecting a couple different tax revenues from overnight accommodations and from the severance of raw materials. And we've operated almost 30 years down the line, well, due to the way we were set up. And at the beginning, the founders also put forward a new and different fiscal conservancy measure, which has served the borough so well over the years, and that is a requirement that we can't spend more than we actually have in the bank. Because when we started, we saved some of the seed money that we were given from the state to become a borough, and we forward funded our government, spending what we have from last year for the next fiscal year. And in fact, it's a requirement in our code that proposed expenditures shall not exceed total reserves. And we put it in our annual budget allocation ordinance every year, and we identify that number. What's the number that we can fund to? We don't always fund all the way up to the maximum, but it's such a unique aspect of the Denali Borough. When I go to statewide conferences or even a national conference, nobody can think of any other county in the entire country or borough in the state that does this. And even the ones with a lot of money, like, say, Valdez, can't do this, can't get to that point, a whole year's funding ahead. That's where we are and are going to stay due to the interesting and well-serving forward funding mechanism that does always limit borough spending. And that's another reason we need to be looking ahead while we fiscally plan. There are some tax ordinances on the November ballot which would take effect, if passed by the people, in January of 2021. And most of that summer would actually be in fiscal year 2022. So those funds, if approved by the people, would be available to address our needs in terms of capital needs and in terms of repairing the schools and in terms of taking care of our responsibilities to fund the schools. Those monies would be available in 2023. So we were set up in a way that we need to be looking forward. We need to be reading that water up ahead and seeing how much money we're going to need in those years ahead, because forward funding requires good financial planning. So that's a little bit about an important fiscal aspect of the Denali Borough. We are the only county in the whole country forward funded. And hope you've enjoyed this Monday with the mayor, and look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks.
Stita is the
Right. All right, so that was borough funding, and then the next one he talks about school funding. So let's watch that one.
I love the
Hi,
music.
welcome to another installment of Mondays with the Mayor. I'm Clay Walker, the Mayor of the Denali Borough, and this time we look forward to sharing some more information about education funding. Funding education here was one of the main responsibilities we took on when we became a borough in 1990, and we've lived up to that by funding it often to the maximum allowable. And there are a couple different components of the education funding that are kind of interesting and have their own nuances and potentially some changes in the years ahead. So I'd like to kind of run through what those two components are so that everybody knows how we fund our education and what it's tied to and what it might look like in the years ahead. One of the components is the required local contribution, and that's determined based upon the full value determination of the real and personal property in the borough, which is assessed about every 4 years. And currently it's about $364 million, and our required local contribution is 2.65 mils of that full value determination. And that full value determination has changed over time. In fact, in this little history you'll see here in FY17, it was $655,000. The state assessor came and did an assessment of property here in 17, and in 18, our required local contribution went up 47%, up to nearly $1 million. And that's a direct savings to the state of Alaska. It did not result in more money for our district, for our education here. It was a direct savings to the state, and there may be more of that coming. As you see here, we do fund our district to the tune of $2,769,000 this year. We're proud to provide them both that required local contribution and the additional allowable contribution. That's a totally different calculation. It's 23% of the basic need. The two are independent. And again, that one, the required local contribution, saves the state money. And, and as we look towards the future, we expect it to go up again. In FY22, we'll have another assessment here. There have been, you know, some significant improvements, significant new developments in the borough since then in terms of valuation. And we do expect to have an increase in that number in the years ahead. Also, there's talk in Juneau about changing that 2.65 rate up to what's in statute, which I believe is 4 mil. There's talk about that going up, which would be another transfer from the state to local municipalities for education funding. It is a partnership with the state. We do fund about 27% of the school's operating budget. Of course, the rest coming from the state. And as we look to the next segment, next Monday, we'll talk about the other big part of that shared responsibility for education between the borough and the state, and that is the major maintenance of the buildings, which is a big topic, and we'll save that for another Monday with the mayor. Thanks for listening in. Thanks for learning more about how education is funded here in the Denali Borough. See you next week.
Okay. So we want to again thank Danelli Planty, a student at the time that did all of those Mondays with the mayors. That was her project that year as an intern for the school. She came over for 1 hour a day and she did that all year. It was great. And I'm so glad that we have. So I'd love to get another intern. If anyone knows of any Protestant kids who don't want to do that, that'd be great. So that's about all I have. I guess the last point I'll make is just that the annual budget is probably the biggest responsibility and biggest action item that the bodies take within a year. A lot happens behind the scenes to get it to that point. There's so many details and nuances to each budget, but as public officials, that is one of the biggest and most impactful votes that's taken in a year. And with that, I'm done. See what if anyone has anything else that they want to talk about. Otherwise, we're good to go.
Great job.
Well, thank you, Amber. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
All right, thank you for attending. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Mark.
Must have had a considerably larger crowd on Saturday, huh?
Well,
We've pared the agenda down a bit.
Pared the agenda down. and even though we didn't get to watch any videos, I actually had already cut out a number of videos that were in. So, but I will put all this on the website and let you know where, and I'll probably email you guys directly as well, just to make sure you get them.
That'd be great.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's great.
Good night, everyone.
All right, have a good night, everyone.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.
I grabbed extra.
Wait, 26.
Make it.
Yeah.